Okay, we can start finally. Sorry for the wait. Thank you for coming here. And I know you are probably tired and kind of restless because it's the end of the day, it's the last talk, and you want to have some beer. So I'll try to keep it light and simple and hopefully not too technical and kind of fun. So I'm Nikhil Verma. I work for Badoo. I'm the team lead there. I work for the mobile web team. You can follow me at Twitter over there, and that's me yesterday looking around Verona. So I work for Badoo. It is the largest social discovery network in the world. We have more than 300 million users worldwide. Or in Badoo, you can meet new people, chat, date with them. We have a couple of websites which you can check out, and we're hiring. So I'm going to talk about visual regression testing, but I want to introduce to you what it is, because it seems like a lot of you don't know what it is, and I think it's kind of easy to understand in the way that I'm going to explain it. So first, it's about visual. So visual, what is visual? It's all about change. So changes can be very obvious, or they can be subtle. So you, as a developer or a QA, it's your responsibility to be aware of the changes that you're releasing in production. And just for fun, and just for a bit of entertainment, I'm going to give you 15 seconds to detect the change between the two images. They're going to come now. Just count it in your head. You don't have to yell it out loud. And 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Where are you going like this? Right, you don't want to do that every day for everything that you release, right? Because we release lots of things every day, and we want to make sure that what we are releasing is kind of aware to us. Like, you don't want to release anything that you don't know about, and that's where it comes in, the visual part comes in. And how can we easily detect change? It's quite simple. You let the computer do it. So here is the image that I showed you before, and here is the image if I run it through a visual regression testing. So you can see the changes quite easily. So I'll just go back and forth a bit. So you can see there's an extra banana. The cookies on the table are a bit different. The cake looks different. The cat has something else in the hand. So you get what I mean. So that's visually. Visually, it's all about this. Now let's come to regression testing. Why do we need visual regression testing? I've been asked this question before, and because people say, oh, hey, we have unit testing, we have automation, we have human QAs. Why do we need yet another way of testing? So the answer lies in the Swiss cheese model, which sounds delicious, and basically it's a model of layered security. It's used by aviation industry and lots of like really serious things. It's not something that I made up now. So basically, Swiss cheese model is about layered security, where each type of security has its own holes and weaknesses. And if you layer them together, you reduce the chances of a risk going through. So to explain it in a more easy way, here is an image. So you have different slices of cheese. Each cheese has its weakness, has its own holes. But what you can do is if you layer enough of them, you can prevent undetected change from going through. So we have unit testing, we have automation, we have visual regression testing, and we have human testing. In this case, for example, you can see that one change made through. So in this case, if it was a bug, it's a feature now because it's on production. So I want to explain it to you how the process works in Badoo today and where we are right now, because it's something that is quite recent, and we are not very good at it, but we are learning. So we use PhantomCSS, which is a visual regression testing framework. So it's built on top of Casper.js, which is a testing framework which uses PhantomJS, which is a headless browser, and it's combined with Resemble.js, which basically does the image diffing. So PhantomJS equals that plus that plus that. So it helps you write visual regression tests quite easily. We have two modes right now, a local mode, which is used by developers because it's local. We choose what test you want to run, so you don't have to run the entire suite. You can say, I just want to test this screen. You manage your own baseline. So before I go ahead, I want to explain what baseline means for VRT. From now on, I'll say VRT. So baseline is the source of truth. So you're comparing two things. What's the source of truth is called baseline in visual regression testing. So you always compare against a baseline. Baseline is a source of truth. So you kind of manage your own because it's on your own local machine, so you do whatever you want. And we use it obviously to develop, refactor, and debug. Next is going to play a video of how it looks like right now. So you go to the command line, you write npm test. It's going to ask you what kind of suite you want to run. So we have style guide, mobile web, and desktop web. So in this case, I'll choose mobile web because I work for it. We have some environments in Badoo. So in this case, I'm going to choose local environments because I want to run my tests locally, for example. And then I can choose the type of, the number of tests I want to run. So we have a number of screens in the application. So I can say, I want to run chat, I want to test menu screen, and I want to test, say, sign-in screen. And the next thing is kind of internal. Basically, we have different ways of user accounts. So you can use your own testing account, or you can generate one on the fly. And as soon as you choose one, your test will start running. And it will run the test. It will give you the results. Next thing is we have automated flow. What does it do? It's used in feature and staging branches. So you develop your feature, you release it on staging, we run it there. We run the entire test suite, which makes sense. I mean, no questions asked. The baseline is production. So basically, every time you develop a new feature, the screens that we compare against are from production. So you always compare against production because production is like master for us. And obviously, we use it to catch regressions and bugs. So how does it work? So I'm going to give you a very brief overview of how does it work in general, and then I'll try and explain a bit more later down the line. So we download our baseline from a server where it's hosted. We generate and compare screenshots. So what it means is that we use PhantomCSS to go through our application screens one by one. We take the screenshots and we compare against the baseline and see the results. We upload the results back to the server where they can be browsed, and we send notifications to the developers and the teams. So here's an example. If your test fails, you get a notification like this that, hey, VRT found issues in this URL. You can check them out over here. Once you click on the link, you go to a website like this, which has a list of all the test runs you have had in the past. I'm going to choose MQA, which is our staging environment. And then on the left side, you have like a list of the environments that we use. So we have mobile web and style guide. We have some failed tests, and we have some pass tests. So I'm kind of browsing through the failed tests, which have the before and after, and in the middle is the error. And there are some small kind of handy tools that we have. It's kind of cool, but you don't use it every day. So you can fade to see the differences if something is very subtle, or you can even swipe. So in this case, you can see we had an icon that was introduced, probably unintentional, but at least we caught it. So, and then we can look at the past tests. Obviously, they're all going to be the same. Nothing is different. So it's just as a reference point for you to remember how it looks like, really just there for the sake of it. So I'm just going to quickly show you some of the issues we have caught in VRT. For example, this is a screen where you can send a gift to someone. On the left side, you see it's supposed to be aligned in the middle, but a CSS change broke it and was aligned to the left, and we caught it. This is a very subtle change, which could have been easily missed by humans. We have avatars. So on the left side, this is the expected avatar. On the right side, the avatar was for a different profile screen, and we kind of messed it up, and VRT caught it. This would never have been caught by human QAs. And by the way, VRT is not just about test or unit testing. It's not something strict. So for example, we change our fonts here. Obviously, it's going to fail, which is fine because we detected it. And in case of complete redesign, so in this case, the two screens are completely different. Everything's going to fail. But that's fine because you have caught it, and you are aware of these changes. So how did this whole thing start in Badoo? Probably some of you know Cristiano Rosselli. He's a fellow Italian. Yeah. So he introduced VRT to our team. He wrote the initial PhantomCSS prototype, and he wrote some initial tests for mobile web. But because it was a kind of a proof of concept, things were not perfect. So the tests were slow. We could not run individual tests, and there was no integration with the build process, which I'm here to talk about today. So let's start improving it one at a time. Our tests were slow. There were two main reasons for the tests being slow. We did not know when our page would be rendered, and we had to wait for the images to download. So I'll go to the first one. We did not know when the page will be rendered. Why? Because we have a SPA, which is rendered dynamically using XHR requests. Probably most of you are familiar with it and work with it in some way or another. So an external tool doesn't always know when the page is fully rendered. and all the content is available. So what we had to do is to say, oh, okay, wait for 10 seconds and take a screenshot. This is not ideal, because sometimes page renders in 1 second, sometimes it renders in 2 seconds. So guess who always knows about when the page is rendered? It's the page itself. So what you can do, for example, as soon as the client is rendered, you can simply add a data attribute to the page. In this case, I'm using a jQuery-like API, but if you're using React or Angular, you can just add a data attribute anywhere in the page that tells you, hey, my page is ready to be taken a screenshot. And in our VRT, we can simply say, just wait for this selector, and as soon as it's available, take a screenshot. Great. Second problem, we had to wait for images to download, because obviously our site is heavy in images. We had to wait for them to be downloaded before we take a screenshot. What we did initially was we replaced all the images with placeholder images, but they are still hosted on a network somewhere, and you have to wait for them to download. This is not ideal. So how do we completely eliminate network layer in this case? The answer is, again, very simple. You inline all images. So we have a list of all images, kind of placeholder images, which are base64. And you simply go in the DOM and say, OK, replace this image with this source. And what that means is that the image is rendered instantly, and you can take a screenshot instantly. So before, we took about 6.8 minutes to run all the tests. After these improvements, we went down to like 5 times faster, which is really good. So the problem is solved. Tests were slow. Great. OK, now we cannot run individual tests. So this is kind of a scary video, and it's not a Webpack config. It's basically how our tests were when we were kind of writing more and more. And again, it kind of started as a proof of concept, which just grew out of hand. So we kept writing tests in one file, and it was really hard to run individual tests, because you have to comment some sections of the file to make the test run. So you can be Captain Obvious and say, oh, hey, we must split the file in individual tests, and we should let them run individually. The problem is, if you do that, you have to write something like this in your console, because you have to write like very verbose syntax, and you do not want that, right? So we found a solution on NPM. It's called Inquirer. Inquirer is really cool. So it's a really cool utility which takes an array of questions. So you pass it an array of JavaScript objects, very simple with some functions, and it converts into an interactive questionnaire on the command line. So it's really cool, it's really easy, and then it makes it easy for you to test, because now you don't have to run crazy commands like the one I showed you before. So we finally did that. The tests are fast, we can run individually. Now the biggest problem is, how do we integrate it to our process, which is quite a big deal, right? So there are many ways to solve this problem, and it's going to be different for each individual, each team. So what I'll try to do today is try to give you options, and you get to pick what you want. Most of us kind of work in a system like this. We have a local development, we develop a feature which goes on staging and then gets deployed to production, goes into master somewhere, and you come back to local. So I mean, I'm pretty sure most of you are familiar with this flow. Probably some of you never deployed to production or something, but you are aware how it works. So we need two things. We need to hook into this cycle, and when the hook is activated, we need to trigger something. So there are different kinds of hooks in technology. So we have Git or Mercurial post-receive hooks. So what it means is that as soon as you have written your changes, you have written a commit, you push it, you can activate the hook and trigger something. Or you can have deploy scripts. For example, you deploy your websites probably via some scripts every day. So you can say, as soon as I deploy my website, run something else, do a VRT. You can have Jira, Trello webhooks. So for example, if your QA has said, okay, if you pass your ticket to QA, for example, and you have used Jira, so Jira has webhooks, which allows you to trigger different processes based on what you want. And the last, you can have no hook, which is very strange, but I'll get to that in a minute. Triggers, and now your hook is activated. You want to trigger something, right? So you can run a bash script. So as soon as, let's say, you pushed a commit, you can simply run a script to start a VRT. You can be a bit fancy. You can start a continuous integration agent like TeamCity, Jenkins, or Circle CI. If you don't know what a CI agent is, it basically is, in a very simple way, it's a software which helps you automate your builds. You can be even more fancier. You can use a Docker VM or a remote machine. You can just ping the machine that, hey, I need my VRT started, please do it. Or in the worst case, no hooks needed, you run a cron job. A cron job is something you tell your machine to do. It's basically like, hey, every 1 hour, take a screenshot of my application, make sure nothing's broken. So if you cannot do any of the other things, you can always run a cron job. You can always do it. We need two more things. We're not done here. So we need a way to notify the users, and we need a way to view the results. Because if you don't do that, you don't have a process. It's just something running in the background, and you're not aware of it. Notification, it's a very simple thing. You can send an email that, hey, your tests have failed. You can send a HipChat or Slack message. Or you can be creative. You can play a sound if you're running it on your local machine. Mac has a very straightforward command to play any sound. I'm sure other platforms OS have it too. See the results. Again, very simple. You can have email. You can bunch up all your results, send them in an email to the user, say, hey, look, these are the tests that failed. You can do that. Or you can have a hosted website with results. So you can just put all your results on a website, allow the users to browse them over there. Some companies like Huddle, they commit their VRT results in a repository. So you can just commit them, and you can just pull and see the results there. Or you can be super simple. You can just leave them on a hard disk somewhere, and you can say, oh, hey, go to this hard disk, or get to this network storage, and have a look at the results there. So the reason I'm trying to tell you this is it's kind of like a menu at a restaurant. So you choose what you want. Maybe you're allergic to something, and maybe you cannot afford certain things. So you choose what you want, and you can build your own process. For example, in Badoo, we have a hook in our deploy scripts, which triggers VRT on a TeamCity agent, which sends a notification via HipChat, and it lets us see the results on a website. Perfect. All our problems have been solved, right? Now, is everything perfect? Not really. So there are a few problems that we have, and I want to discuss about some of them. So we have a problem with stability of tests. So it's kind of a big deal. Sounds like, hey, your tests are broken. It's not exactly like that, but it's kind of like that. So basically, what's happening is that the data that returned from the server is not always consistent, which makes sense. So what we often do is that if there's some dynamic text in the page, just like how we inline the images, we replace the text with lorem ipsum or something, so that the text is always consistent and the screenshot never fail. And this is and there's another thing that is kind of my fault when I started writing VRT, is that when you think of testing, you kind of think, hey, testing must be really strict. It must be like unit testing. Everything should fail or it should work. It's not the case with VRT. VRT should be fairly permissive. For example, like if you develop a feature and it changes the app, it doesn't mean the app is broken. It's just something has changed. So what I was doing initially is that if a test fails, you just crash the whole test suite and say, this has failed. This is not the right way. Obviously, you need to make sure that all the tests have run, no matter what. You take a screenshot. In the end, let the user see the results. So these are the few things that we need to work on. We are not testing for different conditions. So right now, we are simply using one user agent. So our app looks slightly different based on Android, Windows Phone, or iOS. We don't test for that. We just test Android. We don't test for different resolutions. We are a mobile web website, and our mobile, it looks different on different resolutions. We have different hooks, and which we don't use. So right now it's just 320 by 480, which is a standard resolution. We just test on that. We need to add more variants. And yes, we need to expand our test coverage because, well, it's a fairly recent thing. We don't cover all the screens, so we're not super confident when we release something. Most of you have probably heard of this new headless Chrome that has come out, so we are planning to use that, but unfortunately it doesn't work in Linux yet. So all of our build agents are using Linux, so hopefully when it comes out we can use that, because that's probably going to be much faster than using PhantomJS. The last thing I want to talk to you about is that the problems that I just described, they are very trivial problems. I did not ask you to train your own neural network or do something super crazy. They are simple Googleable problems. The way we did it is just like that. We found a problem that, okay, hey, how should I send a notification? It's like, okay, we use HipChat. Go to HipChat's website and see how you send a message. They have a documented API. Okay, how do you browse the results? Hey, let's see what will happen if I just build my own web server and then just upload the results there. Actually, it took me just 2 or 3 days just to, because in the end, you just need a place to keep the results and just browse them. So most of these problems are easily solved, and they are really small problems. And if you kind of combine them together and build them, and you can really make it into a process. And the last thing I just want to say is that please come and talk to me about anything to do with VRT. If you have any ideas or suggestions, I'm completely open. I'll try my best to answer them. Maybe you want to do it in your company, on your team. We can find some ways out. I will try to share a gist or a small repo on GitHub on how to do it easily, because I was at JSConf a few days ago, and I met some people over there who were really interested in some of this stuff. What I had to do was I had to really modify my project to make it work for their website. But what I'll try to do is make a small gist or something which you can just copy paste, change the URL, make it and work on it for your own website. And yes, please give me, that's my join.in talk link, and give me feedback. And thank you very much.